It's the game time decision. So Ohio State, Michigan, the 2024 version of the game. This is Ryan Day's fifth version of the game. Is Sharon Moore's second, technically, since he was the interim coach in 2023, but his is the first official head coach for one side. A chance to go to the Big Ten championship game and end a 3-year losing streak. For the other side, a chance to finish the season with an above 500 record and to stick it to your rival. I'm Steven. That's Stefan. That's Andrew. Andrew, what's your game time decision? What do you want to see? What's going to decide this game?
Well, I think the way that Michigan keeps this game close is by dominating at the line of scrimmage. Perhaps you've heard that for Ohio State-Michigan games in the past. The thing that I am more specifically looking for, though, is Austin Cereville at left guard, Carson Hinsman at center, and Tegra Shabola at right guard. How do you match up with Michigan's interior? Because those are two guys that can genuinely wreck a game. We can talk so much about the guys that Michigan lost last year, the coaches that Michigan lost. Those are two dudes who are national championship quality players, right? Like, those are dudes you win national championships with. They have good edge rushers as well. But I think the interior of this Michigan defensive line is really where Ohio State can have some problems. And, you start to map this out. Okay, well, if they're getting a push and Will Howard doesn't have a pocket, the run game doesn't look great. Will Howard, maybe you have to move him out of the pocket a little bit. Then all of a sudden you're getting pressure with 4 and they can drop more guys into coverage. And it kind of just becomes this cascading effect. I don't think that's going to be enough for Ohio State to lose the game. I mean, check our game predictions later in the week. I think we're all
earlier in the week.
Early in the week. I guess we're all kind of on the same page of where this game is going. But if I'm Michigan, I'm just really hoping that those guys can dominate those 3 guys up the middle for Ohio State. Because if that happens, Ohio State's offense is going to have to find some new answers. I think they will. But that is kind of that first step of how Michigan kind of hangs around and keeps themselves within striking distance to at least maybe pull a crazy upset. But those 2 guys for Michigan, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, they're really good. And Ohio State has to find a way to stop those guys.
So the good thing is Carson Hinsman's gone up against these 2 guys before because he was the starting center a year ago up in Ann Arbor when he went against them. So he's got experience in that situation. You threw Austin Cereville in there, and I understand that because this is only his 4th game as a starter. I am actually more concerned about Tegra Shabola on the right side than I am about Carson Hinsman on the left side because he's had some weird moments the last couple of weeks where Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins have had to make moves in the backfield, and it ends up being a positive because those running backs are very, very good. But just some missed assignments sometimes, but the point still stands. Ohio State's interior offensive line against Michigan's interior defensive line. Stefan, what's going to decide this game?
First, I want to say we talk so much about Ohio State's losing streak in the rivalry. This, I think, is the 5th straight week, maybe, where we've talked about the Ohio State offensive line is like the number 1 game time decision because there's just been so much movement. And I will say they keep answering any questions that we've asked, but obviously this week is certainly bigger. I want to point to Will Howard simply because the only way I think this game stays close is if Ohio State makes mistakes, and specifically Will Howard makes mistakes, turning the ball over, things of that nature. Steve and I were talking about it just before we came over here of the Indiana and the Penn State games had 2 very different final scores and 2 very different feels in the 4th quarter. The difference was that game at Penn State, it was Ohio State, it was Will Howard making the mistakes that kept Penn State in the game, even though at times it felt like Ohio State had it pretty safely secured, right? They go down 10-0. After that, it kind of felt like Ohio State was in control, even with the fumble going out the back of the end zone. The Indiana game felt like the opposite, where it felt like Indiana kept it tight, close, and then they made a couple mistakes with, the fumbled snap on the punt, giving up the punt return, which is a great play by Caleb Downs, but nonetheless, those 2 games could have had very similar scores if Will Howard didn't have the mistakes that he had at Penn State. If he does what he did at Penn State against Michigan, it's going to again be a close game. And then you get to the 4th quarter, and this game's suddenly tight, and a bunch of guys who have lost 3 straight games against this team, it gets uneasy. Can he play a clean game and let Ohio State pull away early and make the entire second half a celebration about ending the losing streak, about beating Michigan, and everything that comes with that, which we expect, right? 20-point favorites, that's what you expect. If he makes mistakes early on, though, this game could get a bit dicier than it should be.
That also happened last year. And a mistake early on by your quarterback essentially ended up being the deciding factor. Mine's the head and the heart of this team mentally. Where's this soul at? Where's this team at right now? Ryan Day said on Tuesday that he's excited to play in this game. And I believe him. I believe they are excited. I believe they're loose. Jack Sawyer, we talked with Will Howard, we talked with Emeka Buka, we talked with a lot of guys on Tuesday. All the captains, they're excited to play in this game. but also you can already see it on their faces. This is a lot, right? And it just feels like this week gets here, things get tight, right? We talk about the last 3 years, Michigan's had a trick play up its sleeve. So what do Ryan Day and Chip Kelly have planned for this week? If something does happen, right? What if there's a bad sack because Mason Graham or Kenneth Grant got loose? What if Will Howard does make a mistake? Do guys get tight? Yeah. Does the feeling of, oh no, not again, sink in? I keep thinking about 2022. They shouldn't have lost in 2022. 2021, I get it. Connor Stallions aside, that defense was flawed, and they couldn't run the ball, and Aiden Hutchinson was really, really good. 2023, Kyle McCord made a mistake at the wrong time, and that cost them a game. I can't for the life of me figure out how they lost that 2022 game. And I am wondering how much of it was just simply vibes. You got tight. You stopped playing loose, and that's where Georgia Ryan Day was born. That's why people love that version of him, because it felt like they were loose, they were aggressive, and they let it all hang out. Are they going to do that on Saturday, or is this going to start to – is it going to – because rivalry games are different, man, especially this rivalry game where weird things happen. So all the football stuff, 100%. Where are they at here? It's cool to be nice and excited on Tuesday. Where are you at here as you get closer and closer to the game?
Well, you start to wonder, too, if Ohio State goes up 14-0, does the weight just remove from their shoulders and it's just boulder rolling downhill and there's nothing Michigan can do to stop it? You know, Ohio State gets the ball first, they score, 3 and out, they score. Then all of a sudden are you like, okay, this game might be 49-3, 40, like you might be in that type of game. If Michigan does things that teams have done in the past against Ohio State, even not good teams like a Northwestern, you think of like a Nebraska, like if they go on a drive and they score and it's 3-0, whatever, Ohio State turns the ball over a la Penn State, something like that. You get to the end of the first quarter, Ohio State's losing. I think you're right. You wonder, the fans are going to be very tight in that scenario. You know, do the players start to tighten up? I think you got to avoid that, and I think that's why a fast start is really, really important on Saturday.
Go ahead.
I think we saw it on a very minuscule level against Indiana, where maybe in the stadium it got a little tight when it was toward the end of the first. The players, it did not faze them whatsoever. It seemed like to the players, it was like, all right, they had a good opening drive, so what? So that's promising to see that from the players. Can you do it on this level now? Can you do it in this game against that team? It's different.
And that's everybody. I'm not just the people on the sidelines, the people in the crowd too, because when you've lost 3 straight to your rival, if something goes wrong, to your point, right? It happened against Indiana. That's Indiana. So what? It happened against Northwestern. So what? Even the Penn State game, I had never at any point in that game genuinely thought that Penn State was going to win that game at all. This is different. This is a rivalry game, and if everybody in the stadium is getting tight because they can just feel the oh, no, not again, I don't think that's good for anybody. Player, fan, media, coach, man, woman, child, whoever you want to throw into that mix. So that's mine. That football stuff, I'm with you guys. But sometimes with rivalries, especially this rivalry, the football stuff kind of goes out the window, and things that don't make sense, like Chris Olave becoming a superstar, just sort of happen. So I'm on the lookout for those types of things too. We're not going to be in the building anymore. Well, you're watching this on Saturday, so we're in the building. We have not been in the building since Tuesday, so we're going to get in there to Ohio Stadium and see how this team enters and just see, are guys loose? Are they tight? It's like, what's the vibe around Ohio State pregame? And it might tell you a lot about how this game might play out, at least for the first 15 minutes of it. So get the text, 614-350-3315. Andrew, Stefan, Steven. Go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. See you after the game, Ohio State, Michigan.